Deputy Smith, you're welcome.
I raised this issue because the House and the country will be aware that it made headline news yesterday when a report was published about the conditions that residents live in Oliver Bond, and I want to congratulate those behind the report and indeed the residents and campaigners who've been working on this for years now. This campaign started about 10 years ago. The campaign and the promise of regeneration started about 10 years ago, but now we're told that the regeneration promise has been put on hold for 4 years. And I don't think this is just an issue for the local authority. The state bears responsibility for the conditions that these people live in. And the question is not just about the speed of the proposed regeneration programme, but it highlights a systemic state neglect and disregard of Oliver Bond tenants and others beyond Balgady, Pearse House, Bernard Curtis House and Bluebell, and indeed hundreds of council homes come to mind. I want us to look at some of the conditions, although it was in the media today and yesterday. I think it's worth going over some of the conditions that people live in. One woman I spoke to today talked about a neighbour who is 27-year-old mother of 4 with kids from 6 years of age down to babies, and she's pregnant again. And she has constantly sewage coming up through her shower onto her bathroom floor. Most of the neighbours will complain about sinks being blocked. From last March until now, there have been several complaints about blocked sinks that have not been addressed by the council. 11 years after a fire in her home, one resident, the mother of this woman I know down there, was waiting for her windows to be replaced, and while the wind and the rain howled through her windows, she had to wait 11 years. Another neighbour waited 3 years for a hall door to be replaced. A 77-year-old woman is still waiting for broken latches to be fixed on the windows, and this should bite your interest, Minister, being a Green Party TD. These people are absolutely crucified trying to pay heating bills because the wind howls through their properties. Broken latches, pipes bursting on the kitchen, sewage outside the flats. Most of them would say that washing machines that they purchased last only 3 to 4 years because of the blockages that wreck the machinery. So what's happening here is that a report and a promise regeneration has been put back on hold for 4 years. Now, it's not just because we're told that these 1936 buildings built by Herbert Simms, and they are very beautiful to look at, have preservation orders. That's all true, but that doesn't explain how the tenants have been treated for decades and how the issues of mould, damp, sewage, etc. continue, and these tenants still have no legally enforceable mechanism to vindicate their rights. Just one comment. We often hear in this House, we've heard it repeatedly from the Tánaiste, but also from other deputies and in the mainstream media, that people shouldn't expect the right to free housing. And that free housing says a lot about the deep class bias nature towards public and social housing in this country. They're tenants and they pay 15% of their total income in their family home on their rent. I think this is very ignorant and shows that there are vested interests in this society who see property as a way of generating wealth rather than as a way of housing families. And I'm asking here today that the government make a priority of Oliver Bond flats and the regeneration of it. And don't just put everybody out to the sticks and expect hardly any of them to come back. There is a block of apartments in Bridgefoot Street that they were promised they would be temporarily rehoused, while block by block Oliver Bond would be regenerated, and that promise has now been taken from under them as well, when the council told them no other tenants will be going into that block. So these are huge issues and the government has to intervene.
Thank you, Deputy Smith. Minister Noonan.
Margaret, and again to thank Deputy Smith for raising this issue, and I didn't see the report, but I am shocked at what I've been hearing, and certainly these are unacceptable conditions for people to be living in, and people should expect at the very least basic minimum standard, decent standard of living, and even decent standard of quality housing in 21st century Ireland. So I'd agree with the Deputy in that regard. Our department is committed to ensuring that tenants in social housing are provided with adequate housing that meets needs, the standards most recently laid down in the Housing Standards for Rented Houses regulations of 2019. Our department is actively engaging with the local authority sector to promote the preventative the maintenance of local authority housing stock and provide significant funding for stock improvement works. In addition to funding provided by the local authorities themselves in respect of their own housing stock, circa 350 million per annum, our department provides funding across a number of programmes to support the local authority work to maintain and improve social housing stock. In all cases, it is the local authorities that identify priorities. The continued work of local authorities in undertaking stock condition surveys, their responsive and planned maintenance programmes, as well as important programmes such as energy retrofitting and voids programmes, seeks to support the local authority maintenance programme. Specifically with regard to Oliver Bond House, built in 1936, as you said, by Herbert Sims, and one of the largest flat complexes in Dublin City, with 397 units and approximately 1,200 residents. The upkeep, refurbishment and regeneration of this social housing complex is a matter in the first instance for the local authority. However, it is my understanding that DCC is actively engaged with the residents and are working on a number of short-term projects to improve the outdoor common areas, as well as the long-term proposals for the retrofitting and refurbishment of the flats at Oliver Bond House. Dublin City Council are working on proposals and designs for 2 projects that will see the total refurbishment of all 397 flats at Oliver Bond House in 2 phases to bring them up to modern standards, including size and energy efficiency. Our department looks forward to receiving these submissions for funding consideration from Dublin City Council and will work with them to ascertain the appropriate funding mechanisms for these projects, and you speak of the other projects, Deputy, in relation to Pierce House and Bluebell as well. In addition, the normal voids programmes funding Minister O'Brien announced recently funding to bring flats that are vacant in older flat complexes will include Oliver Bond House and to bring them back into stock.
Thank you, Minister Noonan. Deputy Smith.
Minister, I think it's very disappointing that you come to address this issue and haven't read the report, but you only hear the testimonies that I've given you here. I'm very, very disappointed, and again I'd like to echo what the Taoiseach has said in his last 2 criticisms of responses from ministers being inadequate or from those who advise you. Let me just cast your mind back to a European Committee on Social Rights that said that Ireland was in breach of the European Social Charter, and this was a class action taken by communities across the country in relation to local authority accommodation, and it ruled that Ireland breached Article 16 of the Charter, that the family as a fundamental unit of society has the right to appropriate social, legal and economic protection to ensure its full development. The provision of family housing is to ensure the right to housing of an adequate standard for not an insignificant number of families. And this ruling was made, as I say, after a collective action was taken to the European Court of Justice, but it's never been acted on by this state. It's never been put into legislation. It's never been ruled upon, but it is about local authority tenants and their rights. They don't have recourse to you may not be aware of this either, they don't have recourse to the Residential Tenancies Board. They are a significant cohort of tenants in this country who are completely excluded from any independent complaints process. So there's 2 things I'm asking you here tonight. One is to really use every power you have and the department's power to hurry up the question of the regeneration of Oliver Bond, and that's the first and most important thing I'm asking you. And the other is to speed up legislation to address your breach of the European Charter on the rights of tenants. Local authority tenants, no matter where they are in the country, have no independent body to go to make complaints, and it's a bit like somebody who feels they've suffered a grave injustice going to GSOC and having the Gardaí investigating Gardaí. Local authorities do not investigate their own complaints properly. Evidence Oliver Bond, evidence Bernard Curtis House, evidence Balgady. We can go on and name them, but the dogs on the street know that this is true.
Thank you,
They
Deputy,
live in
please.
appalling conditions. This is the 21st century.
Minister Noonan.
And first of all, Deputy, I apologise for not having read the report. I received this question in this afternoon, and it was at meetings all afternoon, so I do apologise for that, but I will read the report. And secondly, I give you my commitment that I will work within our department and with Minister O'Brien to try and advance the regeneration of Oliver Bond House. I will give you my commitment on that and try to expedite that with Dublin City Council. And in relation to the legislation on the EU Charter on the Rights of Tenants, again, I will get a response on that to you as well, Deputy. I think it's really important that we try and work together to try and achieve this. Again, I'm appalled at what I've heard here this evening. It really is unacceptable that people have to live like that in this day and age. So I give you my commitment that we will work to try and resolve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.